Hello everyone, Just Podcast TV is here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified on new contents.
Episode 73. Welcome to the Maldives. With her elbows propped on the deck, Vanessa glared fiercely at Katie and Krista. Seeing the two of them grinning smugly really burned her up, but she chose not to make a fuss. In his cabin, James stripped off his wet clothes and wrapped himself in a towel. He couldn't help reminiscing about Vanessa's soft skin. But he was no fool. The situation on the ship was still complicated. A moment of carelessness could lead to an all-out brawl between the women. It was like he was living with a hornet's nest. As long as he didn't provoke anyone, everything was calm. If he provoked any of them, he was afraid he would be swarmed and stung all over. Safe in his berth, he thought, "System, I'm going to start the lottery." The rolling wheel displayed in his mind. Then it started turning quickly. The draw is in progress. It slowed, then stopped. And the system's voice sounded again. "Congratulations, you have obtained the Bear Grylls Wilderness Survival skill." "Oh my God," James said. "This is awesome." Bear Grylls, James recognized the famous host of a popular wilderness survival program on TV. He used to watch the show all the time. Moreover, the special skills the system gave out seemed to have a purpose. Last time it had given him the combat skills of a martial arts grandmaster, and they were soon put to good use. Now it had given him all of Bear Grylls' outdoor survival knowledge. Did that mean he might encounter a situation where he would need to survive in the wilderness? God, he wondered, please don't strand me on a deserted island with these three. That may have been the plot of cheesy novels and TV sitcoms, but he wanted no part of it. The skills are being released. Please check them. A huge amount of information related to wilderness survival was injected into his brain in an instant. When the data flow ceased and he could access the skills in his mind, he grinned happily. He would have no problem surviving anywhere. The jungle, the desert, the mountains, the Arctic, it didn't matter. He took a quick shower and washed off the seawater. After changing into dry clothes, he returned to the deck. The women were squatting beside the huge bluefin tuna taking selfies, then posting them to their social media accounts. Krista was the first to notice him. "Sir," she said, "now we have a problem. How do we preserve this beast so it doesn't rot away right here on the deck?" After all, their yacht was located smack in the midst of the tropical zone, just north of the equator. The weather was always hot here, and the tuna had promptly died after it was brought on deck. If it was not properly preserved, it would start stinking to high heaven. James noted with mild disappointment that Krista and Vanessa had put their clothes back on. It also seemed as if the quarrel between the three of them had been forgotten. He sighed silently in relief. He thought for a moment and replied, "We have the cold storage locker on the lower level. We'll need to break this down, but butchering a precious bluefin tuna required special knife skills. Even the kind of knife to use was very particular. They couldn't just saw it into pieces with any random knife from the drawer." Although he had never personally done it, he had seen a video on the internet once before. It was a famous chef preparing a bluefin tuna for an expensive sushi restaurant in Tokyo. With the audience looking on reverently, it was very ceremonial. "Leave this to me." It was Vanessa. She snapped one more selfie with the fish and tucked her phone away. "You?" Krista and Katie asked in chorus. "What, you don't believe me?" Vanessa replied, looking miffed. "I've done it before. My father taught me. Never one this big, but I know how to do it." James could only shake his head. It was yet another example of the world of the rich that he did not understand. "All right," he said, "you'll be in charge of the breakdown. Krista, Katie, and I will be in charge of transportation and storage." "Okay, everyone, let's hurry up. This bad boy can't be exposed under the sun for too long. Otherwise, it'll be very expensive seagull food." They quickly got down to business. Vanessa was the youngest and seemed to be the least experienced among them, but when she started to work, she stunned everyone. Her knife technique looked very professional. She even had the demeanor of an expert. Even the multi-talented Krista was amazed. She kept praising her. James watched Vanessa at work, as well as the other two doing their parts. These three women, he realized, each were a rare combination of experience, wisdom, and beauty. He was incredibly lucky to have them all along on this adventure. It was a grand feast of bluefin tuna under the stars that night. Krista and Katie were in charge of cooking the fish, and their skills were superb. The tropical night breeze was mild. The food was exquisite. He had wine in hand and three beautiful women sharing his table. Looking at the reflection of the bright moon shimmering on the ocean surface, James felt like this was the best day of his life. The Republic of Maldives was at approximately 4 degrees north latitude, 73 degrees east longitude. It was composed of 26 natural reefs and 1,192 coral islands. It was a typical archipelago. Although there were many islands in the country, only 200 or so were inhabited. Its territory spanned roughly 90,000 square kilometers, including the sea. Situated in the northern Indian Ocean, it had a classic tropical climate. There was no obvious distinction between the four seasons, and the natural scenery was incomparably beautiful. Tourists from all over the world had visited in droves. At 8 o'clock that night, James slowly piloted his yacht into a glittering marina. Finally, he had arrived at his destination. East Ocean Maritime was indeed an efficient company. Before arriving at the Maldives, James had contacted Steve Leland, the representative who'd handed over the yacht to him many weeks before. Mr. Leland told James exactly what to do. He moored the yacht at the largest port in the capital city, Male. After the yacht was secured to the dock, East Ocean Maritime staff received them warmly. They sent professional maintenance personnel to conduct a thorough inspection of the craft, as well as replenish the fuel and other consumables. The service provided by East Ocean Maritime was thorough and thoughtful. It allowed James to experience the high-quality life that rich people routinely enjoyed. After they left the marina and headed for customs, James suddenly remembered that Krista had joined them in such a hurry that he was not able to apply for her visa. Fearing she might have to stay on the yacht for a few more days, he contacted Leland directly to see if he could process the visa right away and send it over. Unexpectedly, Krista took out her passport and opened it. All the necessary visas were there. James realized right then that Krista had not come along to be his personal assistant because Elliot Klein wanted to give him a surprise gift. This was clearly planned. He didn't say anything. He just looked at her quietly. Their eyes met, exposing their feelings. It was now clear they adored each other. Episode 74, A Confession. Passport stamped, they left the harbor and embarked on their long-awaited journey in this beautiful place. Strolling through the streets of Male, the foursome absorbed it all with excitement. They were entranced by the exotic atmosphere of the tropical city at night. Following a taxi driver's suggestion, the group went to a popular street market and enjoyed a sumptuous meal. Afterward, they sauntered over to the hotel they had booked in advance. East Ocean Maritime had their bags delivered there earlier in the evening. By the time it was 10:30 at night, they were worn out from the long voyage. They went straight to their rooms. James had just laid down on the plush bed and was enjoying the cool breeze from the ceiling fan when his phone rang. It was Mitchell Haynes. He had called to make his report. According to Mitch, all the floors of the Global Financial Center had been rented out, except for the one James had reserved for himself and the one he had given to the Silver Bell Corporation. Mitch had transferred all the rent to James's account in time, so he didn't lack for money. James was very satisfied with his employee's performance. He transferred $2 million back to him and asked him to renovate the 60th floor of the building. It was to be his personal office. After that, James arranged for Mitch to go to the Lux Villa to process the relevant paperwork and rent out the remaining 8 apartments under James's name. He didn't really need the money, but it was better to have them generating income rather than sitting unoccupied. On the other end of the phone, Mitch Haynes was completely shocked to learn that James owned so many units in the Lux Villa district. He felt that, finally, he had hooked up with the right employer this time. He swore he would work diligently for his new boss and never betray him. Their business concluded, James ended the call and laid back on the bed. There was a knock at the door. "What now?" he muttered. "It's so late." He walked to the door and asked, "Who is it?" Krista's gentle voice came from outside. "Sir, it's me." He didn't think much about it when he heard who it was. He opened the door and began to speak. "Krista, it's so..." The sight in front of him caused him to swallow the rest of his words. Krista stood just outside the door wearing a white terry cloth bathrobe. Her hair was still wet. Apparently she had just finished bathing. Under the dim lighting in the corridor, her perfect figure was vividly outlined by the custom-made robe she was wearing. Although she usually acted formally in the presence of others, right now in front of James, she projected the vibe of a demure maiden. She was really beautiful, but that wasn't the point. The point was that the bathrobe was tied rather loosely. From where he was standing, there wasn't much left to his imagination. He could guarantee with his life that Krista was wearing nothing else under that robe. Quite suddenly, James had difficulty breathing. His heart was beating wildly in his chest. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" she asked, a finger twirling around her hair. He felt a distinct lack of oxygen in his brain. "Krista, Before he could formulate a complete sentence, she stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. "I'm sure you don't mind me coming in for a drink." He didn't know what to do. All kinds of wild fantasies kept popping up in his mind. He was so nervous he could barely move. Krista wrapped her arms around James's neck. Further attempts to speak were silenced by a pair of soft lips against his own. Their lips moved gently against each other. Lightning sparked where their bodies touched. They kissed passionately for what seemed like forever. When James tried to take it a step further, Krista gently pushed him away. She took a step back and tightened the sash of her robe. Her expression became serious. "I've known dozens of successful men," she said, "but you're the only one I've ever met who can make my heart beat this fast. I really like you." As he stood there speechless, she continued to look at him, as if she wanted to engrave his features into the depths of her heart. Only now did he understand that this girl had the courage to come in here and bare her true feelings for him. She was indeed extraordinary. She did not want to miss out on what she truly desired and had no hesitation taking the initiative. He also sensed she did not have the intention of forcing him to answer. She was kind enough not to pressure him to commit to anything. He looked at her quietly. She truly had a good heart, he thought. Krista walked over to the wet bar and poured 2 glasses of red wine. She handed one to him, then gestured for him to come and sit by the window. She continued softly, "I hope you can forgive me for being so rash tonight. It's just, I didn't want to miss such a chance to let you know how I feel. Now that you do, that's enough. I won't say any more, and I promise I won't do anything to make you feel uncomfortable. All I ask now is that you share a drink with me." James's respect for Krista rose immeasurably in that instant. He recalled an old saying, if you truly love someone, then the only thing you should want is for them to be happy, even if it's not with you. He could not bear to reject a woman with such a perfect combination of beauty, brains, and class. At this moment, they were staying in the tallest hotel in Male, sitting in front of huge French windows, the entire city spread out before them. James gently pulled her into an embrace. The serenity of the scene calmed his libido. He no longer let his imagination run wild. He didn't want to ruin the moment. Sitting together, they drank wine, enjoyed the beautiful scenery, and chatted softly. It was not until late that night that Krista got up and reluctantly returned to her room. Although James and Krista had stayed up past midnight, he woke up with the dawn. He had to go to Sultan Park today. He needed to go alone, and he needed to keep it secret. It was his next check-in location. After leaving a message for Vanessa, Katie, and Krista with the front desk, James went downstairs and headed straight for his destination. Sultan Park was located next to the Male Friday Mosque. It was originally a part of the Sultan Imperial Palace, but eventually it was converted to a public park. The park was famous for all kinds of flowers. It was dotted with fountains and filled with lush greenery. The tranquil atmosphere and sheer beauty made it one of the most splendid places in Male. Since the hotel was located quite a ways from the park, it was close to 8 o'clock when he arrived. Even at that early hour, there were already many tourists waiting in line to get in. As he walked to the gate, He found there was still no notification from the system. He reckoned he had to enter the park and reach the area designated for the check-in to successfully complete the mission. Impatiently, he bought a ticket and stood in line. He could only wait in silence until the park opened at 8. The check-in would be the first mission after he'd received the yacht. It would also be his first check-in outside the United States, the first step in his journey to activate the global part of the system. He was looking forward to it. Waiting outside the park, the minutes felt like years. He couldn't conceive of the special reward he would receive next. Episode 75, A Seaside Villa. Finally, the clock struck 8. The park staff opened the gate. The gaggle of tourist groups led by their respective guides filed onto the grounds in an orderly manner. James entered the park with the rest of them, but before he could appreciate the scenery, the system notification rang in his mind. Ding! The check-in is successfully completed. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the reward. An Ocean View Villa on Coney Island. James was confused. What the hell? Is the system teasing me? I've barely set foot in the park, and now it's telling me the check-in succeeded. Before he could finish complaining, he was stunned to silence. He just realized that the system had given him a luxury villa with an ocean view. Wait, system, are you sure the reward for the check-in is a mansion on the coast of Coney Island? If he were back in the States, this might make sense. But they were in a foreign country now. How could the system give such an expensive reward so casually? Host, the reward for this check-in is a villa along the coast of Coney Island. This system has integrated its network with the rest of the world. All the rewards are acquired through legal means. You can accept the reward without worry. All relevant documentation will be delivered within 10 minutes. Please do not leave your current location. The next check-in location will be the balcony of the villa on Coney Island. After that, the system went quiet. Damn, James exclaimed. It really gave me a mansion in the Maldives with an ocean view. For free. After receiving the confirmation from the system, James pondered his extravagant reward. The value of this villa naturally was greater than that of ordinary villas. In a major tourist destination like Maldives, the sea view alone ratcheted up its worth considerably. He also knew that Coney was the most beautiful island in the archipelago, which further increased its value. According to the system, the relevant documentation would be sent over very soon. Since he had nothing else to do, he started to wander around the grounds of Sultan Park. The park was lush with flowers and greenery. Ancient trees and the remains of historical buildings gave it a storybook feel. You are the apple of my eye. I can never get enough of you. As he was taking in the grand surroundings, his phone rang. It was an international number. Its area code indicated Malé. He knew that the person delivering the system's check-in reward had arrived. As soon as the call connected, a male voice speaking fluent English said, "Good morning. May I ask if this is Mr. James Tucker?" "Yes, this is James." "Thank you, Mr. Tucker. I have with me your documentation. I am at the main gate of Sultan Park. Could you please come to the gate and raise your hand so that I can identify you and pass it over?" James did as instructed. As soon as he reached the gate, he raised his right hand. A young man about 25 years old returned his wave and walked over. He looked to be about 5'9" tall with dark skin, deep-set eyes, and a handsome straight nose. He was a typical local from the Maldives. He had a warm smile on his face. "Dear Mr. Tucker, hello. My name is Lahar. I am the sales consultant for the company that developed the coastal villas on Coney Island." James smiled politely and shook his hand. Lahar respectfully handed over a portfolio. "This is all the paperwork for the mansion you ordered from my company. Would you like to take a look to make sure everything is in order?" James opened the folder and glanced at its contents. It was the real estate documents and other related paperwork about the mansion. Their business concluded, the two of them stood at the gate and chatted cordially. During his conversation with Lahar, James found out that in one of the most beautiful bays on Coney Island, There was a company that specialized in developing seaside villas. It catered only to the top 1% in the world, and its prices reflected that ultra-exclusive clientele. Take his seaside villa as an example. It was probably worth tens of millions of dollars. It was an astronomical price. James had enjoyed his pleasant conversation with Lahar and in the end had asked for his phone number. Lahar gave it gladly, saying that if he needed anything in the future to just call. For his part, Lahar was very happy to make such a wealthy friend. Phone numbers exchanged, the two of them parted. Now that the check-in had succeeded and he had obtained his reward, he was no longer in the mood to explore Sultan Park. He was terribly eager to see his new villa. He wanted to watch the sea from the windows, listen to the waves splash on the beach, and sunbathe on the wraparound deck. There were also 3 beautiful women waiting for him back at the hotel who could partake in all of this with him. It was still early in the morning. He figured the women were still asleep. He was sure they'd be awake soon, though. Their excitement for their vacation would not let them sleep for long. He tucked the portfolio under his arm and started walking back to the hotel. He absolutely could not reveal to them the highly confidential matter of this global check-in system. As he walked away from the park, his phone rang. It was Vanessa. He knew she'd be the first awake, he thought. Vanessa's lazy voice came through the phone as soon as the call connected. "Hello, James. Are you up?" He could picture it clearly, still lying comfortably on her hotel bed. "Girl, I woke up a long time ago. I've been walking the streets of Male. I don't want to waste any of my precious vacation time in bed." "Why did you leave me here?" she cried. He could tell she was pouting again. He tried to console her. All right, I'm sorry, okay? Besides, Katie and Krista are still there. I went out alone. Hurry up and wake them. After breakfast, I will bring you guys to an amazing place." Relieved, Vanessa expressed her excitement and hung up happily.